I want to go all the way back to the beginning then, of essentially, so you mentioned Solihull.
Yeah.
And that's where you grew up.
Yeah.
And what did it look like then growing up, in terms of, you know, culturally, and what did it, you now, do you look back and realise you are a product of that town?
Absolutely, yeah. It was 95% white. It was a sort of a town, a satellite town of Birmingham that had been absorbed into it.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
But at that stage, it finished. It not far from our road, it ended, and that was the countryside.
Right.
And so you could walk into the countryside, and there would be rabbits, and there would be gorse and wildflowers, and abandoned old ruined farmhouses that we used to play in. And now all that has been absorbed by something called the Monk's Path Estate, and the farmhouses that were ruins that I used to play in with my mates have been done up and made into luxury houses. Amazing. And so it was great. And but also it was a very safe place. You could walk into the middle of town through 2 big parks, but it was also the kind of place that if you were interested in things, you would have to get away from.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes, yeah,
so
absolutely.
So there were the people that stayed, and there were the people that went. And the people that left, we'd go back at Christmas, and everyone we were at school with would be slightly resentful or think you'd like betrayed them by going. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was really great. I remember being, you know, on my bike all the time, going down to the woods. In fact, there was a band from Solihull called the Swell Maps that were a bit older than me, a punk band, sort of arty punk band. And just before he died, Nicky Sudden from the Swell Maps wrote a song called Widney Lane, and Widney Lane was the main road, and the housing estate I lived on backed onto it. He lived in one of the posh houses on Widney Lane. I remember I delivered his parents' newspaper, and he wrote a song called Widney Lane, which exactly is 6 minutes long, and it describes every detail of my childhood, because he was in exactly the same geography, going down to the woods, going to Tudor Grange swimming baths, going through the park, and all the things you did, you know. And then when it was kind of idyllic, but also you had a sense that the world you wanted to be in was just slightly out of reach. Even like the fact that there was bands that I'd love to have seen playing in Birmingham, but to get back would have been difficult, you know, because we were just too far out, you know, that kind of feeling of like missing everything, you know.
Yes.
But
so did you want to get in? Is that what you wanted? You wanted to be in the city?
Absolutely a product of it as well, because it's a sort of neutral place. You know, it's kind of, it thinks it's posh, but it's not that posh because it's in Birmingham. It's not posh in the way that Hampstead is.
Yeah.
It's like, and most of the money there was from people working for Rover. You know, in fact, they're in trouble at the moment because the Rover plant's been hacked, and all the production's ceased, and the towns, everyone's running out of money. You know, but so yeah, it was an extremely normal place, but weirdly, it threw up some eccentric characters like the Swell Maps, like Genesis Peorage of Throbbing Gristle, came from Solihull, and Napalm Death, who invented grindcore, were in the year above me at school, and I saw one of their early gigs at Dorridge Village Hall. So it's sort of you know, it's
why do you think that? Why do you think it is?
Because I think sometimes really, like, it's the same with Bromley in Kent, on the fringes of London. That's where Susie and the Banshees and The Cure and all these, and Generation X all came. I think it's something about just bland suburbia kind of creates, throws these things out. It's very well depicted in a film that, who's that guy? He was in the In-Betweeners and he was with Avalon, but he left.
Simon Bird.
Simon Bird directed a really good adaptation of a comic book set in Essex, actually, about someone growing up in exactly that milieu, and it completely was I recognised it exactly as my childhood. And Emma Kennedy wrote a sitcom set around Hitchin about her childhood, and the house that they used, that she grew up in, is exactly the same as my house. They were, you know, a little square grid where there was the same. It's really weird. Like she and I grew up in the same house in different towns, and I said, "Did you ever climb in through the toilet window by propping it open?" "Oh yeah," you know, it was really weird. It was funny. Did you find that the condensation would gather in between that bit of wood that was? Oh yeah, it was like we knew exactly.
Stewart Lee's observational comedy about terraced housing.
yeah, about the exact same terraced house.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What occurred to me then when you mentioned about the kind of town ending and that it being countryside and rabbits is the last show, or the show you're still doing, and you mentioning is it going away to Scotland, like it's one of the Shetland Islands?
No, it's going to Orkney.
And go to Orkney, that's it. And do you think that there is, and I might just be looking for this a little too hard, but there's a connection to be made between like that countryside being there and you escaping there, and then you going to places like
I know. I mean the countryside between the Solihull on the edge of Birmingham and the next place, which was sort of Stratford upon Avon. Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. I mean, as soon as I had my own agency, like passed a driving test and borrow my mum's car, I went off all around that, and it was full of old weird houses and like bits of prehistoric archaeology and mythical places, and I really loved that, and I still sometimes go an inconveniently long way if I'm going to the Midlands by going over the Cotswolds to go through all this place. I really loved it, and also as a kid I'd want to stop and see things like the Rollright Stones, and my grandparents, who I was with a lot of the time, would never let me. They used to say it was boring, and
I love that you've got the other way round of what it usually is. Usually a child's telling grandparents this is boring.
Yeah, I remember my gran going, "Oh God, you and your old ruins all the time." It was really fed with it. They didn't like me reading either. They said that's what Nancy boys did. They said to me. You believe that? It's really funny, isn't it?
Well, why did they have that attitude and you not have? So where did your attitude to, reading come from? And then your grandparents thinking that was something for Nancy boys?
I don't know. I mean, who knows? I don't know. I mean, it's, like, bloody hell. About a year ago, I went into my GP about something, and I obviously showed up on some sort of red flags where I was sent to a new scheme they've got, which is just in the process of being cut by Keir Starmer, actually, where there's free counselling for people that were adopted or began their lives in care in the 60s and 70s. They think there are very specific character traits, strengths and weaknesses that we all have. The sort of things that show up being the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, which I'd never thought about, but I don't know where I was for 2 years. I know that I was in an orphanage initially. I don't know what happens there.
You mean the first 2 years?
Yeah, my life. I don't really know where I was. So, I've got a few years recently. I don't really know where I was, but someone will be able to verify it. So I mean, you moved around. If you're sent to a succession of different places as a baby, you're going to be very disorientated and frightened by that. They know that, because they want consistency. I don't know if when you're in a room full of cots in 1968, were you held? Were you visited? Are you just looked after at feeding and changing time? Don't know.
Yeah.
Then there's a higher than average proportion of people that were adopted or in care with substance abuse or dependency issues. We tend to gravitate towards solitary jobs, tend to struggle with long-term relationships, tend to, be self-reliant.
Yes. Yeah.
So
those also sound like all of the kind of credentials of a comedian.
Exactly, and it's a perfect life.
Yeah,
and to view, as we were saying, to view the world as this other that you're not a part of. And I went in a spirit of absolute skepticism, and then they just went, "Do you do this, this, and this?" Oh yeah. 90% of people that it's like, and so I think it's difficult to know where things come from when you're adopted. It's difficult to know why you might be like or not like your family. It's difficult to know what's nature and what's nurture. That. It's really like it's an unknowable.
Do you almost kind of not waste your time? Is a bit of a throwaway of putting it, but you just don't bother to think about that because
I didn't bother for years. until they put me on this thing, you know.
The meetings with
the meetings, yeah, and I think it's a shame that they're being withdrawn, because counselling for adoptees was and people that were in care has been went on as part of the NHS. Partly, I think, because a big group of women, reading between the lines, took some kind of class action where they went, maybe it wasn't a great idea that we were all farmed out for care into an unregulated religious charity in 1967. You know,
Oh.
so I think it was damage limitation initially, but I found it very, very useful and interesting, but it does create its own problems, being made to think about something which you try to ignore.
Yes.
In fact, I've got the last one today at 2:00. But it was really fantastic. It's quite interesting. I remember the woman said, you know, how did you know you were adopted? And I had a book that I was given called Mr. Fairweather and His Family. And it's about a man. It's a beautiful book, hardback book with lovely watercolor illustrations, very simple language. Mr. Fairweather is a bit bored. He goes, I'll get a cat. And he's like, I'm still bored. So he gets a dog. He goes, it's all right, but I'll get a wife. So he gets a wife. And then the wife and Mr. Fairweather and the dog and cat are all a bit like, what we need is a baby. And so, yes. So they bypass the normal process and they go straight to the place where they're all in cots and whatever. So that explains what, you know, and then, well, there isn't one, we don't like any of these, we'll come back another time. And then they go back the next time and they like one and have it and blah, blah, blah. And she was going, have you got that book? And I was going, yeah. And she's going, that book, that people think it was a disaster psychologically because it's parent-centric, not child-centric. Wow. And she said, all I've ever seen is scans of it. Have you got one? I went, yeah, you can borrow it. It was like giving her like Hitler's diary or something. It was amazing, you know. Anyway, I said I liked it. In fact, then I looked on, I thought I liked it. I thought it was a really beautifully made, sensitive book, you know. Then I looked on Amazon, I looked it up, and there were second-hand copies of it. And it was all people saying, this book ruined my life. This book destroyed my self-esteem. I hate this book. Everything about it is wrong. And there was one review saying, I think this book's really good. It gave me a sense of identity and placement. It's a beautifully produced example of a children's book. That's my review. I'd forgotten I'd written it up. I'd obviously looked at it like 20 years ago and gone, calm down. Leave Sheila Kitzinger alone, you know, who wrote it. And I was finding myself, I was agreeing with myself, going, this bloke's exactly, it's me.
Do you stand by the review?
I stand by the review.
Stand by, good.
But it was funny giving it to this, you know, it was amazing to be able to hand it over to someone who had only read about it as this disastrous thing. Because, you know, the problem with it apparently is that it makes the story about the parents' need rather than the child's need.
Quite sure I liked the bit where the parents were, we don't like any of these.
I know, and also it didn't work like that anyway. You had to take the first one you were given. So there's an element of
lottery.
Yeah.
This is a paid advertisement from BetterHelp. Now, I don't know about you, but I've had some questionable moments looking for life advice. I've definitely unloaded my emotions onto a taxi driver and once onto a bloke at a pub loo. And funnily enough, turns out neither of them were qualified therapists. Who knew? And that's the thing, isn't it? We all turn to funny places for support. But when it comes to things like relationships, stress, anxiety, or just feeling a bit lost, it actually helps to talk to someone who knows what they're doing. That's where BetterHelp comes in. They're the world's largest online therapy platform, helping people find their right match for over 10 years. They do the hard work of pairing you with a credentialed therapist who fits your needs. And if it's not clicking, you can switch anytime. It's completely online, flexible, and has a 4.9 rating out of 5 from 1.7 million reviews. With over 5 million people supported worldwide, BetterHelp is now here in the UK too. So talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/classclown. That's betterhelp.com/classclown. Now, you know when you try to break a habit and you think it's going to take loads of effort, money, and some complicated system. I always assumed it had to be hard. Turns out it doesn't. If you're ready to quit vaping, and you should be, it's a filthy habit. I stopped it. It was horrendous. The first step doesn't need to be hard or expensive. You just need the right tool to start. And that's exactly what Fume Zero gives you. Fume Zero provides the hand-to-mouth satisfaction and sensory feedback your old habit did without the guilt or, quite crucially, the chemicals. This episode is sponsored by Fume Zero. That's Fume, pronounced Fume, spelled F-U-M. It's their brand new grab-and-go flavoured air device, and that's why I think it's brilliant. It's completely clean, zero nicotine. That's why I'm allowing it to sponsor our podcast. Zero vapor, zero batteries, just natural plant-based flavoured air. And it's affordable too, starting at only $24.99. It's got a sleek look and feel, modern and very satisfying to hold. You can even adjust the airflow, which is nice. Tailors the experience exactly how you want it. The flavours are incredible, good flavours. Let me just open one now. I've got some here. I'm going for white cranberry. Oh, that's nice. I actually like that. Oh, I might wear that. Do they do perfume? So if you want to make a simple change, and you should, vaping is bad for you, start here. Take zero chances with Fume Zero today, available for $24.99. Hit the link in the episode description or head to tryfume.com. That's tryfum.com to start with zero. I thoroughly recommend. Get off the vape.
Do you quite a lot of I think we probably touched on this when we last gigged together, that did I bring this up, that quite a lot of comedians are adopted? Mark Steele's, of course, adopted.
Yeah.
And do you think there's a kind of reason that a lot of comedians,
there's a disproportionately high
surprising-
amount
yes,
of people.
precisely.
Yeah, and there must be. There must be, because it's, the numbers bear it out. But
the algorithm tells us it's right.
I don't know. It's difficult to know. I think that sometimes people make good stand-up comedians if they are, for whatever reason, separated from society.
Yes.
Right. For example, there's a kind of comedy that is people going, "We all do this, don't we? Why do we do that?" And what I do, and what a lot of other people do, is we go, "You all do that. What do you do that for? What's wrong with you? Why don't you do what I do?" Don't we? So,
Yes.
and you're a bit like that. You're a bit like that. And you had an odd start in life in many ways. And I think you are removed from society by mental conditions or social.
So in my case, my dad's addiction, and
Yeah.
yeah.
And you look at the normal
Good
people,
example.
and you don't have their life, you don't have their attitudes, and you think, why are you like that, right? And you treat them as if they're strange. Whereas what a McIntyre does, and does very well, is makes everyone think they're all normal, and he's the same as them.
Well, okay, I have an opinion on this, and normally I'm doing the listening.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
years ago, I heard Alan Cochrane as a guest on, and it was like he was like the second ever guest on Stuart Goldsmith's Comedians. It was really, really early days. And he said something that's always really stuck with me, and maybe it's not true, but as a generalization, I think it's quite good, which is the comedians that tend to do the observational comedy, the aren't we like, or aren't I like, but really the subtext is aren't we like.
Yeah.
Actually, you're really odd. You're, like you say, you're on the outside.
Yeah.
As a person in the real world, you feel completely different, completely separated from life, society. You go up there and going, we do this. That's your reaching out to try and be like everyone and to try and understand them.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was a child, my friend was, my best friend, one of my best friends was Crazy Dave. And we would walk to school. And I'll never forget this. It's almost like a kind of what you might say is a bland observation. But it stayed with me for the rest of my life. Is we were in the shop, we were in the local newsagents, and the person in front of us was just doing their weekly shop, but in the newsagents.
Yeah.
And it was just infuriating. He didn't say a joke. He just pointed it out. This shop isn't for the weekly shop. And there was the truth of that.
Mm.
And I found it so funny that this kid was commentating on what was going on around me. And so actually, I say to that, what you said is that the comics that are going, aren't we like? The irony is, that's them kind of going, I'm not like you, but I found the things that I think are the common ground between us.
Yeah. I'll meet you halfway.
And I'll meet you halfway.
Yeah.
And it gives me so much joy to find something that has common ground with you. It gives me so much joy. It actually physically makes me laugh, and therefore the joke is born.
But I also think what is attractive about it is, for me, is that you kind of mainly on your own. You know, like you don't have to. I don't have to be with people.
Yes. And that's it.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of irony of being up there.
Yeah.
Is you're not being.
Well, I tell you, you know, when the 2 hours you're on stage is kind of easier than life in a way.
Absolutely.
Things are only going to happen within certain parameters. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
Like yesterday, I had to do a launch event for this new political website, The Nerve.
The Nerve, yeah.
With Carol Cadwallader from all the people that were sacked or quit at The Observer. And they had put me up in an Airbnb, and me and Carol Vorderman she's writing for it, but we were part of the, I knew that we were there because it would mean people would come if there was some, certainly for Carol, less for me, but, and I knew that that part of the unspoken deal was that I had to stay at the party, you know, and talk to people about the project.
Yes.
And that was very hard.
Of course.
For me, you know.
Absolutely.
It's not what but I had to suck it up because they'd got me an Airbnb for 2 nights, and I really want this paper to work. I think it's really important, and I really love Carol Cadwallader's writing, and I'm really flattered to be a part of it, and I get to do a column every week. It's an interesting experiment at this point in politics.
Yes.
But yeah, I had to do. All the people I met were really nice. They were really interesting, but it's not. I didn't become a comedian to have to actually interact with lots of people in a place.
Exactly, that's it, isn't it? The irony of it, and you're talking about the kind of the parameters of only a few things can kind of go wrong within this box. When I did a gig when I was 20, but I realised very quickly, I come from a very chaotic household.
Oh yeah.
But I realised that once you have your set together, so this doesn't apply to work in progress shows, which are always for comedians the scariest bit.
Yeah.
They're jumping off the plane without the parachute. But once you get your set intact, you basically can predict the future. The audience don't know the future because they don't know what you're about to say, and they don't know that you actually know
what they will do.
Yeah.
Yeah. They think they have free will. But they're actually on a tram line that you've created. Yeah. Yes, I mean it's really it's mostly the current show, because I do the second hour in a costume. At half time I think it's finished. And I think, that other guy's taking over. Because it doesn't even matter what happens to him, because it's not me. So it doesn't even worry me at all. Just like, I'm just inside it, you know.
Yes. And
if it goes down badly, or they don't understand it, it's not my problem, you know.
Well, that tends to not happen for you. But go just quickly, because we're short on time, but going back to that sense of feeling kind of, not wanting to be in the crowded room with the people, that I'm going to assume goes back all the way to, that goes back to, well, I'm going to read comic books instead. Yeah.
Also, when I think about it at school, I really recognised it in my son. You'd have one or two. I was sort of, I moved through lots of different groups of people, the war games people, the prog rock people, the walking people. But I didn't belong to any one particular group.
What's the walking people?
Well, the people we used to go mountain walking.
Fine.
I had like different sorts of, but yeah. and I really liked school, but I didn't sort of commit, to anything. But I didn't have. I'm not one of these comedians that had a bad time at school. I really
Yes,
liked
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
The thing I normally just ask everyone is, or put it to them, is that, and I think you'll know the quote. Aristotle says, "Give me a child until the age of 7, and I will show you the foundations of the man."
Yeah.
Do you think that had he seen you as a 7-year-old, he'd be able to know where this is going to go? And if so, what were the indicators?
Yeah. I mean, I would write stories in my spare time,
Amazing.
And comics, funny, silly comics. In
Do you
fact,
draw?
not anymore, but I wasn't bad. In fact, weirdly, guess what? You know Stephen Bennett, who does Chortle?
Yes.
Yeah, he was at my school, right? And
What?
I used to do a comic, right? And I did a character of him, and the flying Bennett, and he used to fly around with just a head. And then he left after the first year.
Because of that?
No,
Because
just
you
left.
decapitated him.
No, it was just like his head flying around. I can't remember why that was. But
Steve Bennett is a comedy critic,
yeah.
and when Stewart Lee was a child, he drew a picture of him with his head cut off.
No, not cut off. It just was only a head.
It was only a head?
Yeah, it wasn't severed from his body. He just was just a head that flew around, the flying Bennett. And I used to do so. Yeah. And I mean, I remember my mum, when I was about 8, 7, took me to see the Two Ronnies, who I found out only ever did one live tour, and I saw it at the Belgrade Theatre in Coventry. And this happened to me about 5 times in my life that I laughed so much I was insensible. I fell off my chair and was on the floor. Like, it was Ronnie Barker telling this story about a little brown Richard III, and it wasn't clear whether he meant a turd or a bird. It was Cockney rhyming slang, but all the sentences were so well written that it could have been either at any point. And so it was a fantastic routine because it only happened in your head. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You had to decide which one it was. And it was my alchemy. It was magical. In fact, I've probably ripped that off thinking about it, where I have a phone conversation about the names of businesses, and you don't hear what the other person's saying. But from my response, the audience work out what he might have said, and they have to use their imagination to make it. So very probably thinking about it, like so many things, you suddenly go, oh yeah, that was that. I've done that.
Yes.
I mean, I remember it being just superb. Like, and then.
Did you know then? So you sat there as a child going, hang on, so how do I get up there and do
I wanted
this?
to. No,
When
I thought
does
I'd
that
I'd write, and I thought I'd write, and it was actually seeing Ted Chippington that made me think I could perform, because he couldn't perform and neither could I. So I thought, you don't have to be able to.
Yeah.
So,
but he wasn't your first. He wasn't your first taste of stand-up comedy.
No. Well, weirdly, the first. I mean, I remember going to Butlins Minehead with my mum and like seeing like club comics in the
Redcoats.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
well, yeah,
No,
but they had like a cabaret show on. I didn't really like
Yes.
that, and I'd seen like stuff on telly, but the only stand up on telly I remember liking as a kid was Dave Allen,
Right, yes.
which was like just not like you could, even as an 8-year-old, you could tell all the rest of it was a bit shit, But then the first people I saw, the first stand up I ever saw live, really, was Peter Richardson from the comic strip opening for Dexy's Midnight Runners.
That's Red Richardson's father.
Red Richardson's
Yes.
father. In 1982. I went to see Dexy's, which was the third music gig I ever went to, and in 1982, and Peter Richardson was opening in a character of a Mexican bandit. And I remember thinking I was on my own. I used to go to gigs on my own when I was 13. And I remember really, really laughing at it. And then years later, I met him and said what a big deal it was for me. And he went, he was on that tour in a double act with Nigel Planer, but Nigel Planer couldn't do that night. So he did this character, and he said it went so badly, he never did it again. And I remember really liking it. I think it was really good. Then
That's part of the reason you're a stand-up comedian.
Yeah. Then the next thing I saw was about 2 years later was Phil Jupiter's opening for Billy Bragg in a little club.
Porky, was he?
When he was Porky the Poet, yeah. But again, both of those, and it was brilliant because he was, what David Baddiel was similar in when I first saw him in 89, in that they both talked about things that we were interested in as teenagers, programs that we remembered or ways we felt about the world. And those old guys going, this fella, he moved in next year, a black belt. They had nothing to do with us, you know.
Yeah.
And Phil was doing stuff about Trumpton and like things that we'd seen on telly as kids. And so it seemed like unprecedented. Now there's so much content and so much of it is bespoke. People in the end will find something that they relate to, but we didn't. And so it was amazing. And but even then I still didn't want to be a stand-up because I thought Phil was a big funny character, you know. I didn't think I could do that. It was when I saw Ted that I and then after Ted, I mean all bets were off. I saw I started going to stuff when I could, and you couldn't see much in the Midlands. When I was 17, I saw Oscar McLennan at Midland Arts Centre, who was more of a performance artist really, but God, that was fantastic, that show. A stand-up nominally, but a lot of very dark stuff and him rolling about on the floor. And then in Edinburgh in 87, I saw a bill when I was 19 that was Arthur Smith, Norman Lovett, Arnold Brown, Jerry Sadowitz. And that plus Ted Chippington is what I spent the next 5 years doing, a mixture of those things.
Yeah.
But what a thing to see at 19, all those people and all of them at the height of their powers and all like all the things that I liked, the unnecessary unpleasantness of Sadowitz, the laconic charm of Arthur, the surreal weirdness of Norman Lovett, who at the time had a routine about a man who was called the Alphabet Man, and he could make his body form all the letters of the alphabet and all these different scrapes he got into as a result of that. And Arnold Brown, who his phrasing was and remains peerless, you know, the slowness of it. And I went into the H&V record shop the other day, as I have every right to do. And yet there was no question that he wasn't allowed to. There's all these funny things like that. Just that bill, my God.
When you were at school, was there because what's interesting, listening to you, there's not yet been an urge, whether it's school or outside playing out, for you to make people laugh, make your friends laugh. Was that there? Were you a comedian amongst your friends, or was it all kind of internal?
I was at a very minor public school, ex-grammar school. I got a part scholarship, and then weirdly, I got a grant from a charity for orphans, waifs, and strays, which was a bit of social engineering of exactly the kind the Daily Mail don't like.
Right.
Where people who have experienced barriers are given a bit of help. And the humour at my school was the bullies, who were hilarious. They were really, really funny, as long as they weren't bullying you.
Yes, yeah.
Like Flashman sort of characters, you know, like David Cameron kind of was probably like that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Okay,
kind of
yes,
they were really funny and but horrible. And so no, but I mean, but I used to write little funny magazines and things and stuff like that. But
there was no, like you say, there's no
class clown.
You weren't a class clown.
No.
It doesn't sound like there was an urge to perform, and it was Ted Chippington almost not perform.
Yeah,
that made you think, right, actually, so I don't.
I wrote like all little comedy sketches and things, but I didn't think that was something I'd end up doing. It was very liberating seeing Ted as a 16-year-old, and it's a bit like, you know, people 10 years older than me who wanted to be musicians thought that they had to be like Yes or Genesis, and then they saw the Sex Pistols. About 8,000 people seem to have seen the Sex Pistols in a 100-seater room called the Manchester Free Trade Hall, you know, in 1976, and they all went, "Oh, you can just do that. I'll do that then." you know,
Yes.
and that's sort of what I felt about Ted Chippington. I could never thank him enough. It's embarrassing, really. My whole life would have been absolutely different. I wouldn't be sitting here now talking to you.
You wouldn't have peaked
No.
sitting here talking to me. This is not what you had in
know,
mind.
no, but I mean, it's sort of amazing, like what the string of. But I'm also very grateful to the Four as well. You know, whenever I meet guys from that time that were in that band, that because I liked them and they thought it would be funny to have this irritating man annoy their audience. That's that. Like, I mean, you know, everything hangs by threads, doesn't it? We're so lucky, you know.
Yes.
Everything's there's so much random chance and luck in how we arrive where we are. You know, weird.
But you made your. You could say you made your own luck by being, you know, by being at all of those
Lucky.
concerts. You went to those things, and
I was lucky. I was lucky that I wasn't.
And also,
I was
you
lucky
took
I
a lot
wasn't
of-
pitchforked into a mass grave like other children that were born out of wedlock in the 60s.
Well, when you put it like that, I think that's amazing, Adam. I think that's a lovely. I think that's a lovely time. That's a perfect point to end with just all of that.
Me saying I was lucky I wasn't pitchforked into a mass grave.
There you go, Stewart Lee, not a class clown, but we got a sense, I think, of what made the clown. So, you know, what can you say? One of the best ever, and what a pleasure to talk to him and have him be so open as well. And yes, he did say there might still be tickets for his talk because it's been extended for so long. So do check out, see if you can go and see him live. It's an incredible show, and of course. To Class Clown listeners, please please subscribe, follow us on YouTube, subscribe on Spotify, and leave comments. All helps. And of course, you can sign up to Patreon if you want to get the show ad-free with some bonus content as well. That's enough from me. I've been Sean Walsh, and I'll see you next week. Cheers.